Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to install some Peco Twistlock Point motors. I did already install some of these in another video, but in this video I'm aiming to show the installation a little bit better and in a more concise way. Hopefully somebody will find it helpful. These aren't exactly difficult to install, but before you begin, unless you're just gluing your track straight to the board, you should install your track bed, whether that be cork or a foam track bed like I'm using. It's probably a good idea to know where you want your points too, rather than just installing these randomly. Here, I've got 3 sets of Peco points ready to go. I'm assuming these machines only really work with Peco points. I've no idea if they work with any other manufacturer's products, but they might. I haven't tried it and I don't really plan to. Anyway, when you've figured out where you want your points, you'll need a template. You get one of these with each point motor. There are 2 templates on this piece of paper. This one for below board installation, which I figure most people would be using, and on the other side for above board. These diagrams are simple enough to understand, so I probably don't need to explain them. The way to use these templates is obviously pretty simple. When you've got your points in position, slide the template underneath with the appropriate diagram facing upward. I'm using N-gauge track, so I use the green lines to line my track up, trying to get it as straight as possible, while also lining up the tie bar, which is the black part that moves side to side, with the indicated part of the diagram. Obviously, there's a good chance you'll knock the track out of place when doing this, so just keep nudging stuff around until it all goes together and is lined up the way you want it. Tape the template down so it's as flat as possible. Clearly you want to be careful with this so you don't shift the template out of place and then have to re-kajigger things. You can use regular sticky tape, which I ran out of after the first template, but duct tape also works. You could also use pins or glue or whatever you like really, as long as the template doesn't move. You can, as I'm doing, install multiple points in a row, but if you are doing this, I would suggest paying extra attention and making sure things are really lined up as straight and neat as you can get them. If you're doing a single set of points, or some points with some track between them, you can get a little bit of flexibility in how you do things. Points that are connected to each other are obviously more rigid, so if you don't have them all lined up properly, some of them might not throw all the way, or you may be forced to have a kink or a gap in the rail to get them to work properly. It's not really difficult, you've just got to put a little bit of care and effort into it. Next, drilling. You'll need 2 drill bits, the larger of which, the instructions tell us, should be a 6mm bit, but I used a 7mm bit. A little bit of extra room for the moving parts can't hurt, and it's not like an extra millimeter is going to be harder to cover up or anything like that. If you have multiple templates ready to be drilled, you can save yourself several seconds by doing them all at once instead of changing drill bits.
Oh, I don't think anybody's ever thought of that pro tip, Herbert.
They sure haven't. The other bit you'll need is a 1.5mm bit. This is for mounting the screws, so a larger bit here is almost certainly going to be detrimental. It's probably obvious, but you should try to drill your holes as straight and vertical as you can. Now for the installation. If you can flip your baseboard over, that'll be the easiest way to do this. If not, you may have to climb under your layout, but still it shouldn't be too hard. Here's the little baggie that you get with the Twistlock Point motors. This contains everything you should need. The black bar is for above board installation, as are the larger red ring things. The ones we want for under the board are the 4 smaller rings. These will be mounting pins? I don't know what you might call them, but they're what the motors will lock onto, so they're kind of important. You need 2 of these red rings per screw, and of the 3 screws, only 2 of them are needed for this. You slide the red bits onto the screws like so, with the wider bits at the top and bottom. Then you screw them into the smaller holes, which if you've done properly, should be clearly visible on the board. Tighten the screws so they're fairly tight, so there's no movement of the red plastic, but not so tight that you break them. These screws seem to be brass, so they're not magnetic, which does make things a bit more difficult, especially if you're prone to dropping things like I am. Once you've got those installed, it's a simple matter of slotting the actuator pin through the large hole and twisting the motor so the little clips line up and engage with the mounting pins. You may need to apply a small amount of force, but you shouldn't need too much. Obviously, you do have to make sure that there's space for the actuator pins to go through, and they do protrude through the board a fair bit, which is good if you've got a fairly thick board. To get these to move the points, all you've got to do is slot the actuator pins through the holes in the tie bars of the points. Very simple. This is where you test to make sure you've got the full range of motion on each set of points, and then you should be ready to glue things down. Glorious. Obviously, with the pins protruding so far up, you'll need to trim them down, and you can either do that with the motors in place, though I would suggest before you do that, you remove the tracks. Probably after marking the height on the pin that you want with a marker, because you can attach and unattach these point motors whenever you want. For me, the best way to cut the pins down was to just take the motors off and cut them down at my desk. That's all well and good, but how do you power them? I suspect there's a few ways, but I'll show you how I'm doing it. I've got this power supply, which puts out 16 volts at 1.5 amps. I'm definitely not an electrician, so I don't quite know what I'm doing, probably don't follow anything I say as gospel, but this seemed to be appropriate. I bought this from Amazon, and obviously, the one I've got will fit Australian outlets. You probably don't really want to use that unless you live in Australia. You may have to shop around. You can also use the output from some train controllers, but I don't have one that has an appropriate output. This power supply I have, I understand, is intended for use with doorbells and things like that, and it came with the bare ends, which I've connected to this Peco capacitor discharge unit, or CDU. I'm fairly certain that in this clip, I've wired this wrong. The blue wire should go to the negative terminal, and I believe negative is the same as neutral. The brown wire, being the hot or positive wire, should go to the positive connector, so this is wired backwards. I didn't feel like refilming the video because I would have had to drive elsewhere and just didn't feel like doing that for a couple of seconds of video. I'm not sure how important the polarity here really is. It still worked when connected this way, and the magic smoke was not released. The yellow and green wire is ground. I'm not sure if this needs to be connected to anything, but I suspect if anything, it should be in contact with the blue wire, but here it's just hanging out doing nothing. I understand that you don't need to use a CDU, but the way I read that it works is that it provides more of a jolt of power to move the solenoids in the point motors. I believe this is especially helpful if you want to throw more than one point at the same time. Obviously, the CDU doesn't need to be the Peco one, but it was the easiest one for me to find. If you're so inclined, I hear there's kits for this kind of thing. I am not so inclined. Here's how you wire it. You do get wiring instructions with the point motors, but I figure I might as well demonstrate it anyway. You connect both of the green wires coming from the point motor to the negative terminal on the CDU. The positive output from the CDU should go to your switch. I'm using the Peco switch intended for this purpose, but you could use any switch you like, more or less. I believe it really should be a passing contact switch, one that doesn't allow a constant flow of power. I've read that a constant supply of power to these machines can cause problems. From the switch, you connect one output to the red wire on the point motor, and obviously the black wire to the other. And it works. Obviously, it's a good idea to do a better job of wiring these things together than I've done here. This is probably not how it's going to look when I put these on my railway. It's just a demonstration, which is now done. That's how you install Peco Twistlock Point motors and wire them up, and I hope that's been helpful for somebody. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comment section below. I have, obviously, been working on an N-gauge model railway in other videos, along with other scale modelling misadventures, so subscribe and check out some of my other videos. You can find links to my Patreon, Discord and other things like social media in the description below. And as always, I shall return soon, so until then, be excellent to each other, have a nice day, and thanks for watching. Farewell.